So today we're going to look at how to write a blog post for an audience with the ultimate aim of getting email signups. And this is something that I recommend in the book, Marketing for Developers. And it's something I've recommended for a long time. It's something I've been doing for quite a while. So Carl Alexander, carlalexander.ca, has volunteered this blog post for this case study, and it's basically he wants to teach the single responsibility principle, and it's targeted at WordPress developers. You can see that that's part of his title right here. So there's two things you want to do with something like this. The first is you want to make sure that this blog post is going to be read and shared. And the second is that you want to ensure that people are interested enough that they're going to sign up for your email newsletter at the end. Before you even start writing, you should really identify who your audience is and what their biggest need is. And as I was talking to Carl, going back and forth, and after I'd read this post here, it was clear to me, it looks like the audience for this is a WordPress developer who's looking to level up. They're looking for the next step in their progress as a programmer. And one way to start to do some research is to start practicing searching for things in Google. And so in this case, I typed in next step for a WordPress programmer. And as I'm scanning this, I found a few things. I found this one here. I especially like this question: what can you do to become a PHP professional faster? So I'm going to check that one there. How to become a top WordPress developer. The next step for a PHP developer on the Treehouse forums. Forums are usually pretty good. And you'll see in these blog posts people addressing kind of that question we asked. What's the next step? How does someone level up? If they're, maybe they started developing WordPress by building their own plugin, but now they want to become a pro. They want to know how they can get from where they're at right now to becoming a professional. Becoming a professional is the outcome they're looking for. And often if these places have comments, you might be able to find stuff that in the comments that will be helpful for you as well in figuring out your audience. This comment here is a good example of finding and recognizing pain. This person here says, the advice you've given in this blog post is great, but if I was going to move up the ladder and increase my skill, I'm going to have to put a lot of time into that. And so that's something I might bookmark for later and refer back to, see if a lot of other people have that pain as well. Here's another one I found: how to become a top WordPress developer. And the next step for a PHP developer. This person even has a TLDR. I'm an intermediate PHP developer trying to figure out what to do next. Possibly get a new job with that title, or just keep reading books and watching videos, or something I'm not thinking of. So here's someone that's looking for the next step, and maybe object-oriented programming in PHP would be the next step for this fellow. So we've at least found some things with our audience. We're understanding them a little bit better. We're understanding the need. Let's go back to Carl's post. So the most important part in any blog post is the beginning and the end. And the reason they're the most important is because this is what's going to hook someone into actually reading this. So you want to make sure that your headline is really strong and your first few paragraphs and really your first few lines are really strong. This is where you have to convince the reader to stick with you, because you want them to get all the way down to your call to action at the end, which is the other important piece. You want to have a really strong call to action. So going back to the top, one thing I would do, Carl's title is really clear. He's talking about the single responsibility principle, WordPress and you. The question is his audience people, WordPress developers? This fellow right here, let's use his name. Is it Constar? Oh, he has it right here. Oh, no, he doesn't. So this fellow right here, what does he need next? What's going to convince him to read this blog post? And maybe he's searching for single responsibility principle, and if he is, that's great. But if he's not searching for that, why would he click on this post? This is where I would start testing things, and one way to test them is would be to start posting ideas on Twitter or in forums like the Treehouse forum here, and see how people respond. So maybe you could reply to this and say, have you thought about object-oriented programming? But if you're just trying to get someone who's a beginner or intermediate WordPress developer to click on this, you might want to change the title to something like your next step as a WordPress developer. Has the word you in here, which is really important, and it speaks directly to the audience. Your next step as a WordPress developer. Of course, this is just an idea. I would keep kind of writing things in context, and if you have a person's kind of face in mind, that helps too. Maybe you could even find this fellow on Twitter and say, hey, would you be interested in learning about this, or which title would you click on? I'm trying to think if there's another way I would approach this. The word why is quite powerful. So we could say, why is your next step as a WordPress developer? So the reason that this is powerful is because it asks a question. Why is OOP your next step as a WordPress developer? People are inclined and curious to see, well, what's behind the curtain? And that's one way to look at it at a headline. It's hinting at what's behind the curtain. So there's a few ideas for Carl. He opens with a story, which can be powerful. A few weeks ago, I had a conversation on Twitter with Nathaniel about Stack Overflow question. He posted the single responsibility principle and WP classes. One worry about this is that we're noticing that there's actually not a lot of points. This hasn't been upvoted a lot of times. It's been viewed only 47 times. So one worry I have is that the single responsibility principle is not going to be a really powerful keyword to attract people to this blog post. But I think the idea of leveling up or becoming or understanding object-oriented programming as a WordPress developer might be. So I would actually take his second paragraph and I would move it up here. As a WordPress developer, you may have started working with or looking into object-oriented programming. The reason I like this is that it talks to the audience right away. This here talks about the author right away. And I talk about this a lot and keep reminding folks of this, but people don't really care about you. They care about themselves. They care about their problems. And so you really want to reach them right away. As a WordPress developer, oh, you're talking to me. You might have started wondering about object-oriented programming. Yeah, that's me. You may have even heard of something called Solid. Yeah, that's me. So you want to guide them down. And, maybe this isn't even a really powerful paragraph. Maybe we could get rid of this. Maybe we could take this part here and move it down below here. So if I was Carl, I would rework this a little bit. I would also maybe try a few different headlines. I usually write probably about 5 headlines for a blog post. I try different things out. I especially like putting something in there and then going and saying, I wonder what this fellow would think. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the meat and potatoes here. This part is important too. You want to give them something that has a lot of quality here and that convinces them to continue to go through the whole the whole post. He's got lots of examples here, and he's also has this part that says, why is this useful for you? He can actually also consider putting this part, because these are some pretty strong points at the beginning, because these might help sell people on why they should keep reading through all these examples here. This is a pretty long post. So that's another thing he might want to try, is putting this at the top. Okay, let's look at his call to action. Need more help or have a question. One thing I don't like about this headline is it's overused, it's cliche, and people tend to skip over things that they've seen before. It's like, oh, okay, here's the need more help or have a question part where he's gonna ask me to sign up for something. I think what you want to do is speak directly to the people that are kind of on this journey with you. So one idea would be something like, ready for the next step in your journey as a WordPress developer. That's a pretty strong statement. If I've tracked with this post all the way to the end, I'm interested. I'm ready for my next step. What's the next step? And he has kind of three things here. You might have questions, still might need help, leave a comment. That's the first one. I also read a newsletter. That's the second. And P.S., I also have a software service called Healthy that I'm working on. That's the third. If I was Carl, I would focus on just one of these, and I would really highlight it. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to focus just on this one. And again, what people are the people who are reading this, what they want to know is, what's in it for me? So you're saying, I also read a newsletter where you can ask me questions. So I also read a newsletter. It's focused on you, the author. You need to focus this on the reader, where you can ask me questions. That's an okay offer, but it's not really compelling. How can we make this more compelling? If it was me, I might say something like this. You can take the next step by and maybe even we could subscribing to my newsletter every Saturday. You'll receive a new tutorial like this that will help you level up your skills, become professional. And maybe say on your journey to become a professional WordPress developer. So you can take the next step by subscribing to my newsletter. Every Saturday, you'll receive a new tutorial like this that will help you level up your skills that's a little bit awkward, but you get the idea. You're telling them you can take the next step by subscribing. This is your one call to action. Every Saturday, you'll receive a new tutorial? Oh, just like this. Interesting. And that will help you level up your skills while you're on this journey to becoming a professional WordPress developer. And you might need to massage some of this language a little bit, but you get the idea. The other thing is, a link is okay, and I've used that approach as well, and sometimes the subtle approach is good. But this is a pretty long post, and I think what I would try if I was Carl is really emphasizing this part here. And so you might want to do something like, we could have wrap this in a div where we have, let's see, let's just add some padding and stuff, but maybe we're going to have a border. It's 1 pixel, it's dotted, border color to kind of emphasize. And then really what I wanted to do is put a border around this whole section. The other thing I think is I would have a button in here, or the actual form. So this is a long post. People are tired, their eyes are tired. Think about them. They've just gone through this big thing. They just want to know the next step. You got to make it easy for them. And again, sometimes a little PS with a link can be effective, but sometimes the best thing you can do is have something a little bit louder. And I don't think you have to be scared to add something that's a little bit louder to the end when you're basically trying to convince people to take the next step. And so I don't know if Carl has he might not have a button class on here, but I would use something like that. Subscribe now. So style this as a button, and one thing we have seen is sometimes a button works better than a form. And the reason is they click this and now they're committed. They've already done kind of a committing step. But I would test both. Test having a button as well as having the form fields inline. So I hope this was helpful. Again, just to kind of review, to begin with, you need to be really clear about who is your audience and what do they need. Once you have that information, develop a really strong headline. That is what is going to show people what's behind the curtain, make it something that people would click on. And again, we know that there's some power behind next step for a WordPress programmer. That's why I originally suggested using your next step as a WordPress developer. The next thing is your first paragraph has to be a great hook. And if you can, avoid talking about yourself in the first paragraph, talk about the audience. The meat and potatoes is important. You're going to need to have really good content. You're going to want to have a good flow. You're going to want to keep people going all the way till the end. And at the end, your call to action is super, super important. Help your reader understand what you want them to do next. Don't offer 3 or 4 different options. Just offer one. What do you want them to do? And in this case, we're saying you can take the next step by subscribing to my newsletter every Saturday. This is what you'll receive. I hope this has been helpful. You can check out the book I'm writing, justinjackson.ca/marketing for developers.